All right, Mamdani and Maduro in the same city makes quite a rich story. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. On Monday, Americans watched as Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro was paraded right through New York City. It was something to see. Taken from his holding cell in Brooklyn and shuttled into Manhattan federal court, watching this was just incredible. Where for about an hour here in the city, the socialist dictator Maduro was only a block away from our new socialist mayor, Zoran Mamdani. Ain't that something? Truly a remarkable moment. The world's beacon of capitalism, now run by a kid who's never had a job, a self-proclaimed socialist running the financial center of the world. It is such an embarrassment to this country. All as his fellow socialist is arraigned in federal court for crimes committed against the U.S. over the past 12 years as he destroyed his own country with socialism. Watching the trial of a ruthless dictator who killed his own people to keep power as he devastated his nation is exactly what New Yorkers actually need to see in this moment. Currently, more than half of the people in this city think that they support Zoran Mamdani's socialist policies because, of course, all of this nonsense sounds so great before implementation. It sounded great when Maduro and when Hugo Chavez said it as well. Here was Mamdani the day that he took office, talking about bringing the diverse city of New York together via the warmth of collectivism.
If for too long these communities have existed as distinct from one another, we will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism.
I remember seeing it that day when he made that comment and thinking, how could he possibly make a statement like that? Who would let him make that statement on his first day at City Hall, again, in a city that is the definition of American capitalism? Something else. Collectivism, the sharing and spreading of wealth. A wholly anti-American sentiment being preached by the mayor of the largest city in this country on the steps of City Hall. These people refuse to see the very obvious that when wealth is shared as a collective, wealth disappears very fast. Look at all the times this has been tried. It is a very simple flaw to understand, and yet New York's mayor still believes that he can bend human nature and create this utopia, as so many before have believed. And again, it all sounds great at the beginning. Free stuff, higher taxes for all those people that make more money than you. Sounds great. The trial of Nicolas Maduro, the state of Venezuela tonight, with valueless paper currency blowing down the streets, people starving, no gas, no water. That's what it looks like at the end. The beginning sounds great. That's a picture of the end. This week, while talking about the World Cup of all things, the soccer tournament that's going to be all over the United States, Mamdani reminded us all that he's just a young, dumb kid who doesn't know much and has never had a job.
I had a New Yorker the other day come up to me and ask me if there was any way I could help him get World Cup tickets, because he was saying that the cost that he saw for a game was $600, right? This is increasingly out of reach. We have made what used to be a working class game into a luxury experience. And there are too many for whom it doesn't matter where the World Cup is being played in the world. They know where they're going to watch it. It's TV. And we want to ensure that there are more experiences available to each and every New Yorker.
First of all, there's no World Cup games in New York, but let's pretend that there was. Exactly how is Zoran Mamdani going to ensure that poor New Yorkers who want to go to the game can do it affordably? How's he going to do that? The World Cup is in huge demand. That demand gives us the ticket prices, and the ticket prices also give us the experience that is so good. It takes money to support international soccer and to have the best compete at such a level. These talented athletes aren't going to do this for free, Zoran. Zoran's dreams of a $10 ticket to the World Cup would leave us with experience much like watching youth soccer down the street from your house. It'd be the soccer version of what Mamdani and socialists do to all of our society, in fact. There are similarities that can't be denied. The left ruins everything beautiful, everything good. Cuba, Venezuela, both late-stage socialist countries absolutely collapsing. This is what they look like. The infrastructure completely rotting. It looks disgusting. The industry disappearing, the people are starving, and nobody is working. Everyone lays around in the heat waiting for their rations. I've spent multiple days in Cuba. I've seen it. The human spirit is destroyed. Now you look at blue American cities and you start to find the beginnings of this same depression. I remember how clean and how perfect and how beautiful everything was after 8 years of Giuliani and another 12 of Bloomberg. And then here comes the socialist. Here comes really a communist in de Blasio. You start seeing dirt, filth, homelessness, decay, crime. All of that comes back again. An obsession with equity. They hate that anybody lives better than anybody else, so they got to make everything crappy. The only true equity possible is for all to be equitably destitute. That's the honest case. You're never going to make everybody equally rich, so we all just have to be poor so Zoran can be happy. Mamdani's plan to give dignity to the struggling requires stealing that dignity from the prosperous, from the people that have figured it out, from the people that work hard and have a good life. His cabinet is rife with Marxist communists like this woman, Sia Weaver, who's been all over the news the last couple of days, a woman who hates private property, who will be torturing New York landlords as a job for the next 4 years.
For centuries, we've really treated property as an individualized good and not a collective good. And we are going to transitioning to treating it as a collective good. And it will mean that families, especially white families, but some POC families who are homeowners as well, are going to have a different relationship to property than the one that we currently have.
We're just bringing in a whole cadre of idiots who've done nothing but study at left-wing schools and have never look at her apartment. She's never figured anything out. And she's just going to have power now. The land of the free. New York elected people who want to take your home from you and place you into a state-owned cubbyhole with just enough space to fit your needs, right? Each according to their means, each according to their needs. Isn't that their motto? All because Zoran Mamdani was clever enough to make a flashy campaign and Andrew Cuomo phoned it in. We have to go through this for the next 4 years with this Nimrod running our city. Every person who was dumb enough to vote for this should be forced to watch videos of Venezuelans in Caracas crying tears of joy in the streets over the last 3 days. All right, Senator Eric Schmitt, member of the Armed Services Committee, joins us now, and we got a lot to talk about. I want to start here in New York, though, and the extraordinary situation that we have, sir. We have a socialist dictator arrested and arraigned in New York City just as we elect a socialist mayor at the same time. And I find that to be so interesting, and I'm hoping when you see the support that Mamdani has in this city is really scary. Do you think that the clueless voters that put Mamdani into power are going to get some kind of lesson from this, from what we've seen from Maduro and from watching Venezuela right now, the reaction of the people in that country to the arrest of their president? Is that going to teach people in this country something?
Well, first of all, before we get into that very serious question, I want to say Happy New Year to you and your audience. I always love coming on with Rob Schmitt. Same spelling of the last name.
Exactly.
We're like
right.
Brothers from another mother. So it's good to be with you in 2026. But yeah, look, New York, this hasn't worked anywhere. It's been tried. And you just saw, even in his acceptance speech with Mamdani, talking about ridding ourselves of rugged individualism in favor of the warmth embrace of collectivism, or whatever he said, is totally insane. So I think New York's in for a rude awakening. It just doesn't really work. And then when you get to Maduro, who's now going to face justice in New York for effectively poisoning Americans and the narco-terrorism charges and other charges that there got a lot of years tacked onto that with the indictment and the superseding indictment that followed. But and look, I would be remiss, Rob, not to point out just how incredible this operation was, this law enforcement operation to go get Maduro and bring him back for justice. What our military men and women did to protect the federal agents, the FBI, to go arrest this guy is pretty incredible. Nobody else in the world could pull that off.
Yeah, no, it was, we went into the details of it last night, and it just is, I mean, reading what they did and how they pulled this thing off was just incredible, and how perfect it was. And it just, another great moment for Secretary Hegseth, who came in under so much scrutiny and has had to fight off, a media that hates him and an entire apparatus that thought that he was not good enough. And he's definitely proven a lot of people wrong in these last several months. Let's talk about Venezuela for a moment. Delcy Rodriguez is the vice president of Venezuela under Maduro, and she's officially been sworn in now as the interim president. There's a lot of people who think maybe she was the one that was helping our operation, and she was maybe the leaker, she was maybe the spy. We don't know that. But the Trump administration, she's now in power. The Trump administration is basically putting her in that position, letting her stay in that position, saying they're going to control her, and she's showing that she's willing to capitulate with what she's been sending back. They're not putting their support behind the opposition leader, though, the woman that won the Nobel Peace Prize, Maria Machado, who's said great things about the president. They have the same politics. The Wall Street Journal, though, reporting that the CIA concluded that regime loyalists, that other people that were under Maduro, would be best placed to lead Venezuela, I think, in the short term, finding that the opposition would struggle to lead the country, which in a way makes sense because it's, if you just swing it the other way rapidly, you could find yourself in the middle of a civil war. This is like a move in the right direction that kind of keeps everybody calm in the short term until maybe perhaps an election comes.
Yeah, I think that's right. And the key word here is stability. And there's a lot of lessons learned from the sort of disastrous foreign policy we had for 30 years. Where you would topple an entire government and try to, grow a Madisonian democracy in the sands of the Middle East. That didn't work. And although this is different because we're in the Western Hemisphere in countries that are much more sort of like us and used to having elections in a republic, stability, I think, is the order of the day right now. They have a continuity of government. So the people who are criticizing and saying this is regime change, that's not what this is. One person was extracted, and they have the government that, was there continuing on, with the United States having a lot of leverage, principally through this quarantine, this naval quarantine we have on their sanctioned oil. The fact is, we've had this oil sanction for a long time. Nobody ever wanted to enforce those sanctions. That's what President Trump's doing. And it's got China obviously has noticed all of this stuff because they were using Venezuela as their playground, and that's not going to happen anymore. So, they've got, and I think the regime change that's going to happen is going to come from the Venezuelan people. Moving forward, they're going to have their opportunity. But the stability, I think, that's important right now is, the VP's been sworn in. You've got that continuity of government. And we have high-ranking administration officials working with her and other Venezuelan officials to make sure there's stability in that country as best as possible.
And it keeps it from some kind of a military coup. If you put Machado in and then the military is still loyal to Maduro, makes a move, that could go wrong in a million different ways. This does seem like probably it's not the immediate result that the Machado and the freedom people want, the voters that wanted to get rid of Maduro want in the short term, but they'll get there, and this will probably be a much more stable way to do it. Before I let you go, the 2026 HHS funding bill evidently contains more than $5 billion in funding for refugee assistance services. That's 3 times higher than it was even under Joe Biden. Amid all of this Somali fraud, how is that line item in this bill?
Well, I don't think you're going to see that. That is not going to remain. That was a subcommittee version of a Senate bill that hasn't made its way to a vote on the Senate floor. The House is maybe moving on that first anyway. So I think you're going to see some big changes, which is welcome as far as I'm concerned. And then secondly, I'm actually introducing legislation this week as it relates to the Somali fraud to enhance the fraud protections, having verification on the front end. But most importantly, I think, to introduce denaturalization here. If you've come here and you've gone through that process, but you defraud and are a fraudster, you defraud the American taxpayer, you're going to be denaturalized and you're going to be sent back home. I think that's an appropriate response, hopefully a deterrent, so that if immigrant communities want to come here and fleece the American taxpayer, the American people know we're going to side with the American taxpayer.
And the fact that the previous administration took off all the guardrails and all the protections against fraud is, these people are criminal. It's so disgusting. And the fact that they just are able to do that and to just waste billions and billions of our dollars, I will never understand.
Rob, and
how they can do that.
one point on that too. I don't think we've seen the end of this. This is the tip of the iceberg. You also saw a lot of COVID dollars go out the door indiscriminately, not for anything related to COVID years later. That was pushed out the door by the Biden administration to be sent to these, red state or these blue states and blue cities. I think you're going to see more fraud uncovered, and people need to go to jail.
Yeah, they're complicit in the embezzlement of our money. I totally agree. Jail needs to happen. We need to start seeing some people put away for this kind of crime. Senator Schmitt, good to see you. Thanks so much. Happy New Year to you.
Thanks, Rob. Take care.
All right, Robby Starbuck is the host of the Robby Starbuck Show. Mercedes Schlapp also with us tonight, both actually of Cuban descent. So they certainly understand Latin American communism and the devastation that it brings. And Mercedes, I want to start with you. Every Mamdani voter that follows the news is going to be force-fed the Maduro story and what's happening in Venezuela. And that's all going to happen in their own city. I find that to be incredible.
Right, and Mamdani uses the words that Fidel Castro used to use, which was that of collectivism. Yeah. I mean, it is the same type of language. It's their Marxist playbook that they push forward. But what they have to understand are the dangers of any sort of dictatorship, the corruption associated with an authoritarian regime. I mean, my father was a political prisoner in Cuba under Fidel Castro. They killed a lot of his closest friends. Because when my father stood up against the communist dictatorship, he paid a very heavy price in terms of his life. But I will tell you this, for the people of Venezuela, and I have so many Venezuelan friends, they are crying tears of joy. It is a moment where they finally can sense that freedom is coming, and that truly it was one of the most strategic military operations that we've seen, successful military operations that we've seen to take out a dictator who has been associated with these narco-terrorists, he himself a narco-terrorist, in basically not only oppressing his people, torturing his political opponents, but also being part of this drug trafficking ring that we know has devastated the lives of so many Americans.
Yeah. Robby, as we get the news from the president that just came in that between 30 and 50 million barrels of Venezuelan oil are going to be coming into the United States, your perspective on what happened over the weekend and the trial that's going to take place here in New York?
Yeah, Rob, this is very simple. What happened in Venezuela was the president of the United States and my buddy Pete Hegseth, they reasserted to the world America's dominance. This flag behind me, we told the world in this Venezuela operation, this is not a history lesson. Yeah. This is the future. This is the present. And this flag means something again. We are going to assert our will and dominance all over the globe in the interests of the American people, period. Yeah. And that message has not been sent for a very long time. And when you look at these corrupt thugs out in the world, people like Fidel Castro, people who celebrate Fidel Castro or Maduro, they got that message loud and clear with the actions taken in Venezuela. We can send our best in there. We will take out anybody we need to, zero American casualties, and black bag any corrupt thug we need to black bag, and get rid of these communists once and for all. And it's great for their people, but honestly, even as somebody with Cuban descent, more importantly, this is great for the American people. And you see that in President Trump's statement. Oil is one of many different things that I think we can get out of this. And I think the trade is very good for my Venezuelan friends to have freedom in their country again. And every Venezuelan I know is overjoyed about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you're exactly right. For a very long time, the bad guys in this world could just mess with the United States, and yeah. there was really no recourse, and boy, has that come to a screeching halt under this administration. Mercedes, Robby, both thank you so much. We appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
A major Maha moment. The childhood vaccine schedule gets a major reduction. We've got that next with Senator Ron Johnson.
It's about political
American people deserve better fiscal.
It's terrible. Politics seeps into everything.
What do you mean? Talk about climate change or the economy or, of course, elections.
You can't find out what we should really expect to happen.
But of course you can.
Go to IBKR's Forecast Trader. Put your money where your mouth is.
So, here is a before of my stomach before Sonobello, and this is after.
This year, don't just lose weight, lose stubborn fat and sagging extra skin permanently at Sonobello.
I had some loose, wiggly skin, and it is no longer there thanks to Sonobello.
Our expert surgeons use micro laser technology to safely target and remove your diet-resistant fat and tighten loose skin permanently.
I wanted the results of the tummy tuck, but not the downtime. I had a 10 out of 10 experience.
We've helped over 300,000 people transform, and we're proud to be America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist.
In just one visit, Sono Bello got rid of my love handles and my belly fat.
Do you want that flat stomach? You go get that flat stomach. Call Sono Bello. Get in there for your free consultation. Do this for you.
Schedule your free, no obligation consultation. Our flexible payment options make it easy to get started today.
A new year brings new threats, and Cyberman's ready for every one of them. While hackers plot their next move, Cyberman's already there, protecting families, businesses, and governments before danger can strike. This year, protect what matters most with easy-to-use, award-winning protection. With PCmatic, you get American-made protection that's faster, smarter, and stronger. Start 2026 with confidence. Visit PCmatic.com today.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Used daily, dermatologist recommended Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream can help restore your skin's natural barrier and reduce the appearance of bruises. If you have mature skin and bruise easily, get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle and get back to having way too much fun.
All right, a massive MAHA move by the Trump CDC updating its childhood vaccine schedule. A huge story for all the MAHA moms out there that voted they wanted a healthier country. Dramatically slashing the number of recommended inoculations that go into our babies, no longer broadly recommending newborns receive jabs for COVID-19, rotavirus, influenza, meningitis, RSV, hepatitis A and B, only for high-risk groups is the recommendation for everything on the screen right there, encouraging parents to consult with their doctors before making this decision. The CDC also slashing the number of recommended childhood vaccines down to 11, which is a major win for RFK Jr. and the MAHA movement, cutting that number way down. The president sharing this image from an HHS assessment of U.S. Childhood and adolescent immunization schedules compared to European countries. Look at where Europe is at 11. Look at where we were at 72. And look at all of those needles. Trump writing on True Social, America will no longer require 72 jabs for our beautiful, healthy children. We're moving to a far more reasonable schedule where all children will only be recommended to receive vaccinations for 11 of the most serious and dangerous diseases. Adding, parents can still choose to give their children all of the vaccinations if they wish, and they will be covered by insurance. Senator Ron Johnson is the chair of the Permanent Subcommittee of Investigations. His committee has done extensive research into all of this, into this subject matter, and he joins us now. Senator, thanks for coming on. What does this mean? I mean, they've made a major adjustment here. How important is that for the health of our kids?
Well, Rob, well, first of all, Happy New Year. This is, I think, an incredibly important first step. I would recommend to all your listeners, if you have any questions about vaccines, read Aaron's series new book, Vaccines, Amen. There are other great books out there, Dissolving Illusions, Tools All the Way Down. Peter McCulloch has a good book. But Aaron's series just really kind of nails it and brings it all together. If you have any questions of, what kind of studies have been conducted to ensure the safety and effectiveness of these drugs, you'll find out they're just completely inadequate. And so that's really the next step is now for whatever vaccines remain on the schedule, none of them have ever been tested against a true placebo control. They'll test it against a previous vaccine, which, the analogy I use is like, well, if you want to test the safety of arsenic, test it against hemlock. Oh, yeah, they look both pretty safe, right? So, I mean, that's really the kind of game that these vaccinologists and these, vaccine manufacturers have been playing with children's lives. So now we have to restore the integrity of those types of studies. And I think that's exactly what RFK Jr. is going to demand of these vaccine manufacturers is, okay, you didn't do it on the front end, because once they get the approval on the drug, that's it. There's supposedly long-term surveillance. Nobody surveils this long-term. And anybody who tries gets killed in the, vilified in the mainstream media as anti-vaxxers. So there's no follow-up. They're on the schedule. These guys making, millions and billions of dollars off these vaccines because there's no liability of these products. So they don't care about. They only care about getting things approved.
How did this get so absurd? You know, how did science get shoved so far to the side in this process? And why is it that if you ask questions about this, as you just said, you're immediately vilified? I mean, it's insane to me that the moment you start talking about adjusting this vaccine schedule and aligning it with how so many European countries, I thought the left in this country all hated the United States, thought we were a bunch of rubes, and thought the Europeans were all the brilliant ones. Why is it that when you try to align our vaccine schedule with what they do, they scream bloody murder on this? What happened in this country?
So it literally goes back to the late 70s and early 80s, where you had news organizations with integrity starting to report on the injuries caused by vaccines. That caused manufacturers to drop out of manufacturing them. So all of a sudden we were facing a situation where we were not going to have any vaccine manufacturers at all. I mean, the liability was just too high, it was too great a risk. And so in 1986, they passed the law that eventually gave the manufacturers complete immunity for any kind of liability caused by the vaccines. That caused an explosion in the number of vaccines that got approved. Again, there's billions of dollars at stake. You've got the revolving door between federal agency employees and the vaccine manufacturers and big pharma. You throw on top of that then, Bill Clinton in the early 90s allowed drug manufacturers to advertise on TV. Now they control the media. Now they control the narrative. And so where you used to have stories, you know, on 60 Minutes, Phil Donahue, where you literally talk to parents that had their vaccinated children, you can't, that's just not allowed. And we saw that big time during COVID. You couldn't, to this day, people are still denying, and you don't have any really serious journalism in terms of the injection injuries caused by the COVID injection. So again, that's basically in a nutshell. The news media started reporting injuries. They passed a law to give immunity. Then the news media got to advertise drugs, and the race was to just drive that schedule to insanity.
What do you say to Republican Bill Cassidy? He's a doctor. He's one of your colleagues in the Senate who seems a bit angry about this. He's talking about how he's seen an uptick in measles in his area, in his state. And, you know, I still believe that if we're seeing more measles in this country, it probably has something to do with the open border we had for 4 years, because they have not adjusted the recommendation for MMR, right?
Well, first of all, I love doctors and nurses. They saved my daughter with a serious congenital heart defect when she was born. So I've got a great deal of respect for doctors, but they can't know everything. And so one thing, in medical colleges, about the only thing they teach about vaccines is they're safe and effective. They use that same narrative. And so doctors just assume that what the federal agencies are telling them is true, that they're ignoring the fact that the federal health agencies have been captured by big pharma, that these studies are non-existent. I mean, if you listen to Aaron Siri depose Stanley Plotkin, the godfather of vaccinology, it's stunning what Aaron Siri gets him to admit. The number of days, like 5 days, where they follow safety in some of these trials, the limited number of children that these vaccines were tested on. It is a scandal in of itself. My guess is a lot of these doctors are simply unaware of that, which is why, again, I recommend Vaccines. Amen is a great book by Aaron Siri that will bring you up to speed, and you understand why people like RFK Jr., people like myself, are willing to stick our necks out here and try and protect our children.
I got 10 seconds left. Do you think that the adjustment will do anything to the autism epidemic in this country? Fewer vaccines, especially right out of the gate into little babies. Do you think it'll have an impact?
Depends on which vaccines remain on the schedule and what their causes. I mean, I don't know exactly what causes autism. I certainly believe the dramatic increase in vaccines can certainly be a part of that. And you are screwing with somebody's immune system. Why do we assume it's only for the good? A lot of these chronic illnesses are autoimmune diseases. Does that tell you something? We have to stop being in a state of denial.
Yeah, well said. Senator Ron Johnson, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Have a great day.
All right, coming up, it is the Democrats' favorite holiday, January 6th, as they hide their absolute elation with a somber candlelight vigil.
Pain doesn't just hurt, it limits you, and it keeps you from doing the things that matter most. I know because I've been there. I work hard, I'm active, and I love being with my family outdoors. But what I've noticed is that life never waits for the pain to disappear. So let's start the new year off with a Signal Relief patch. Take advantage of our 20% discount and get your patch today.
As a surgeon, if it can help decrease that pain, short-term or long-term, why not try it?
I absolutely recommend the Signal Relief patch for anybody going through, it could be anything.
I'm wearing a Signal Relief patch 24/7.
This Signal patch has literally changed my life.
When I put this patch on my ankle, I was getting relief.
In a recent study, 85% of people felt relief, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. We all hurt, whether it's our neck, back, knees, or shoulders. The fact is, the patch works.
Here's Chris Cunahan with the Leaf Filter Gutter Report.
From blizzards to downpours to windstorms or heat waves, no matter where you live, Leaf Filter keeps your gutters clog-free year-round. Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
Owning gold in your retirement portfolio provides significant tax benefits. And at Orion Metal Exchange, our clients get the advantage of a dedicated gold IRA department, and they'll continue to serve you free of charge beyond your initial purchase. Get a free copy of our Gold IRA Advantage, our new report that outlines the big benefits of owning physical gold for retirement.
Go to orionreports.com or call 888-350-2067.
Halfway doesn't win fights. We show up every day. I'm proud to partner with Balance of Nature, real whole fruit and vegetable ingredients. Nothing halfway.
Lock in 50% off for 1 year when you subscribe to the Whole Health System.
This little light of mine has been dark for quite some time. Then I let in the light to help see more of the light inside of me.
I needed more from my antidepressant, so my doctor added Caplyta, proven to provide greater relief from depression symptoms than an antidepressant alone, building on my progress without starting over. Weight gain and reported sexual side effects were not common.
Elderly dementia patients have increased risk of death or stroke. Caplyta is not approved for dementia-related psychosis. Call your doctor about new or sudden mood changes, behaviors, or suicidal thoughts right away. Antidepressants may increase these risks. Report fever, confusion, stiff muscles, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High cholesterol and weight gain may occur, as can high blood sugar, which may be fatal. Common side effects are sleepiness, dizziness, nausea, dry mouth, feeling tired, and diarrhea. These aren't all the side effects.
Ask your doctor about Caplyta.
Help see more of the light inside of me.
Check their new game day fit. Oh, snap! DirecTV got hot.
That's right. DirecTV is flexing with all those pro and college games at your fingertips. This ain't your dad's cable, son. It's Couture.
Okay, thank you so much. I was about to say that. It's Couture.
Today marks 5 years since the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol.
Today marks 5 years since the January 6th insurrection.
Today is a really kind of sad anniversary for the United States. It's the 5th anniversary of the deadly Capitol riots.
They're never going to stop doing this, I should say, and I think we all know that. Every year, Democrats and the media try to hide their pure elation on this day and pretend that January 6th is a somber anniversary for themselves and not the most beautiful piece of political propaganda they have ever received and then manufactured. Earlier today, the former members of the corrupt J6 committee, remember the committee that was fully corrupted, wouldn't even allow actual Republicans to be on? What kind of a trial is that? They held an unofficial hearing on Capitol Hill to, quote, set the record straight on the J6 insurrection. Eric Swalwell, who was preemptively pardoned by Joe Biden, because that's something that authentic people have happened to them all the time, says January 6th should be remembered the same as 9/11.
We treat the day with the same reverence, the same sorrow, and the same resolve as the day the towers fell.
Okay, Eric. On the other side of all this, there's the president reminding the world earlier about all the deceptions that have been wrapped up in this day.
Peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol, peacefully and patriotically. Do you know that the Unselect Committee didn't report it, that I said those words? Do you know that the news never reported the words walk or march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol? Do you know they never reported it? It's a scandal. They never reported that Nancy Pelosi was offered 10,000 soldiers.
Trump's right. You can't forget about the 10,000 National Guard troops that he offered and was turned down by the Speaker of the House and by the D.C. mayor. He offered that up. He said this could get ugly. We should probably get more security in there. And who could forget about Nancy Pelosi's daughter and the documentary she made that day, filming a moment where Pelosi even admitted her failings in securing the Capitol. Tudor Dixon is the host of the Tudor Dixon podcast. She joins us now. Katie Zacharia, legal and political strategist. Ladies, good to see you both. Katie, they're doing a candlelight vigil. They look so ridiculous in these moments. They look so unserious. And you have, I mean, look at these people and how this is 5 years later. It's the only thing they care about because it's political capital. That's why. And Chuck Schumer saying tonight, J6 is not over.
Let us remember the attack on January 6th is not over. It lives on in the threats to our election workers. It lives on through those who want to take away our right to vote, who want to legalize voter discrimination. We must never, never, never stop fighting for this beautiful democracy, which January 6th showed us is more fragile than we ever imagined.
Katie, go ahead.
Outside of the political theater that shows, Rob, the reality is that Senator Thune must pass the SAVE Act. President Trump said that today on voter ID. And the fact that Chuck Schumer would use January 6th as a way to say, and yet they're still trying to steal our elections. Who's trying to steal the elections, Rob? The Democrats. The Democrats, and that's why they don't want voter ID and proof of citizenship. This demonstration here, Ashley Babbitt died, a Republican, a conservative, a MAGA, a Trump supporter died on January 6th. But they're not mourning those who have died from fentanyl deaths, those like Laken Riley and Rachel Morin who have died from illegal immigrants, the 13 service members who died in the botched Afghanistan withdrawal, or those who have died from the California commercial driver's licenses on the roads, Rob. They are mourning the fact that they lost the election and they were just absolutely ridiculous.
It reeks of that, doesn't it, Tudor? I mean, when you watch them do a candlelight vigil 5 years later, and you see just how unserious they are and how everything to them is just a political calculation, and also how stupid they think their voters are, to buy into the idea that they believe that this is such a somber moment that must be remembered this way. They're more somber about this than they are about 9/11, Tudor.
It's interesting that they don't see how silly they look and that they don't realize that their voters have already figured out that they're using this as a method to try to manipulate them. I mean, let's face it. I remember Tim Walz's wife saying that she opened the windows of the governor's mansion so she could smell the tires burning because she loved those riots in Minnesota. I mean, give me a break. You cannot choose one and not the other. They are all about crime. They are all about making sure people are causing death and destruction across this country. And the person who lost her life that day was a MAGA supporter. They want to act like this was I just can't even handle the idea of Swalwell comparing this to 9/11. The man should be disqualified for running for governor of California. The disrespect of those families and the disrespect really of all Americans. We all lived through that. We all know someone who was affected by that. It was so horrendous. I mean, it goes beyond clownish. It is just totally disrespectful and disqualifying for public office.
You brought up Tim Walz for a moment there. His career is dead. The billions stolen, and he should honestly be in jail for the complicity of the stolen wealth of this country. I mean, just to allow that and to not care, have no regulation on how the money goes out is ridiculous. He said this today. I want to play this moment from Tim Walz as he defended himself very angrily today.
I'm going to note to all of you, today is January 6th. There's no debate what happened. The President of the United States led an insurrection against a fair election to try and overturn that. It ain't happening. I'm not going anywhere. And you can make all your requests for me to resign over my dead body. Will that happen? I will fight this thing till the very end to make this state better. Buck stops with me. I'm accountable for this. And because of that accountability, I'm not running for office again.
Katie, I got 10 seconds left. Your reaction to that?
Not running for office because Nick Shirley showed and exposed all of the fraud single-handedly more than anyone in our federal government. Tim Walz should have never been in office. I can't believe this man was a vice presidential candidate, Rob.
Tudor, 10 seconds.
I completely agree. I cannot believe that they put him forward, and we have to investigate why, because I think that's how they're winning elections.
I totally agree with you there. Importing these people, and there's a loads of corruption that's going to come out of that state and other states. We're going to see a lot of that. Tudor Dixon, Katie Zacharia, good to see you both. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Big blue governments equal big fraud. As we just talked about, the scandal that just killed Tim Walz. Is Gavin Newsom next?
California is more corrupt than any place.
Mike Hammond here, founder of Signal Relief. Meet Dr. Beth Dupree, breast cancer surgeon for over 35 years.
In my surgical career, I have treated thousands of patients, and finding effective pain relief has always been a priority. Believe me, I was skeptical, but Signal Relief caught my attention because it actually works. Clinical trials show over 85% of participants felt relief within 72 hours, with nearly half noticing a significant difference in just 15 minutes. Just place it near or above wherever you have the pain, whether it's your back, your shoulder, your neck, or your knee. Signal Relief Patch brings proven relief. I recommend it to my patients, family, and friends, and I get to witness and experience their pain relief firsthand, and that brings a smile to my face.
Join the hundreds of thousands who have experienced relief with the Signal Relief Patch, and it comes with a money-back guarantee. Trust Dr. Dupree and me. The patch works.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, the 91-year-old formulator of Immuno 150, an incredible nutritional supplement. There's nothing like it. Now, Immuno 150 is different because it contains 70 plant-derived minerals and 80 other nutrients. Dr. Linus Pauling, known for vitamin C, was instrumental in convincing me to get into the mineral business in 1983. He said the world is sick due to a lack of minerals in topsoil. He said the body needs 60 minerals, but the average food and supplement has no more than 12. That's the reason for Immuno 150. Since its inception, it's had a powerful impact on the lives of thousands of people who could not get any help from various supplements they took or their doctor. Now, I suggest you try Immuno 150 and see what 70 minerals, CoQ10, and 80 nutrients can do for you. Look at the videos on our website. Millions have. Now, consider placing an order for Immuno 150 online or call our toll-free number. I know you'll be glad you did.
Ageless Male is a best-selling brand in male enhancement. Our rapid nitric oxide booster, our performance-boosting Wonder Pill, and our best-selling formula for boosting your total testosterone. Ageless Male. Be the man you want to be.
You woke up with a sore throat and a low-grade fever. You know you are getting sick, so here's your choices. You can get sicker and miss work. Try to see a doctor this week or sit hours in a crowded waiting room at urgent care.
I have a smarter option for you. Open your medical emergency kit. Match your symptoms to doctor-recommended prescription in your booklet and take the right meds now and get well faster.
This is not a first aid kit. It's like having an urgent care in your home. It includes doctor-prescribed medications to treat over 39 medical issues like respiratory infections, strep throat, pneumonia, UTIs, and more.
No waiting to see the doctor and no standing in line at the pharmacy. It's right here.
Every home should have at least one medical emergency kit, and here's how to order.
Order online and save $45. Your kit to treat dozens of common and serious illnesses is rushed to your door. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS. That's urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code NEWS.
Welcome back. While Minnesota is in the spotlight over rampant Somali fraud, Trump is warning that Newsom's California is even worse.
We got to straighten this out before it gets too crazy. California is more corrupt than any place. California is more corrupt than Minnesota. And I won Minnesota. Well, Tom's going, I think so. Well, it's close. It can't be proportionately, probably nothing's more corrupt, right?
Trump announcing a federal investigation into California after the gubernatorial candidate Steve Hilton and the comptroller candidates claim they've uncovered $250 billion in potential welfare fraud through a tip line investigation. $250 billion in welfare fraud coming out of one state. Do you have any idea how much of your money this government lights on fire? This is why you can't have a big government. Due to the rampant fraud found in Democrat-run states, Trump's health department also plans to freeze $10 billion in funding for child care services, social services, and cash support for low-income families in 5 states, including California, which they're all going crazy over, by the way. They don't care that the money is being stolen fraudulently. They only get angry when you threaten to turn it off so that we can fix the problem. Larry Elder joining us tonight. Abel Maldonado also with us, former Lieutenant Governor of California. Good to have you both here. Larry, how corrupt is your state?
Rob, thank you for having me. Abel, nice to see you. The answer is very, very corrupt. Let me get this straight. Tim Walz has presided over fraud that might be $8-9 billion that he decided to drop out of his race for a third term for governor. Gavin Newsom has presided over fraud massively bigger than that, and he wants to run for president. We don't know the exact number. We do know that if you combine relief for COVID plus the money for homelessness that has been either misspent or untracked, it's got to be at least $70 billion. That's those 2 programs alone, let alone many of the other programs here in California. And this man has had his fingerprints on everything. Yep. He was 2-term mayor of San Francisco, 2-term lieutenant governor, 2-term governor. So he cannot escape. His fingerprints are all over this fraud.
Yeah, Abel, you were a lieutenant governor. You know the state better than anybody. Tell us how the fraud is happening in the state, where it exists, what the problem is. Is it similar to Minnesota where they just don't want to check anything? They just want to hand out money and they don't care?
Well, Rob, I know the state, but I know Gavin Newsom better, to be very sincere with you, Rob. And let me share something with you. When we were going through Walz with all the stuff that he was doing, let's not forget that President Trump and Elon Musk with Doge was talking about waste, fraud, and abuse. And they kept saying, oh, there's no fraud, there's no fraud. Let me tell you something. Walz is the prince of fraud. Gavin Newsom is the king of fraud. We got a fraud dynasty brewing here, Rob, and we haven't even started. We are at the tip of the iceberg.
Where is it
Billions
specifically?
Billions.
Where in what programs? Where is it?
Well, let's talk about this right away. $32 billion for unemployment fraud. Homelessness, $24 billion fraud. $18 billion for a high-speed rail, no track. Now we're getting to the daycare. Just yesterday, they showed up to one daycare. The first daycare, there was a Rolls Royce parked out in the front of the daycare. Yeah. So it's just the beginning, Rob. And I'm glad you're putting a spotlight on it because let me tell you something. Walz wanted to be vice president. Gavin Newsom wants to be president. These guys are the kings of fraud, and we need to expose them now.
It's so infuriating that you have a Washington establishment that wants nothing more than to grow the government bigger and to get its hands on more and more money, looking for money anywhere they can find it, any new tax they can dream up. And then the money that you give them, they couldn't care less where it goes. They couldn't care less if it's wasted, if it's stolen. They don't even want to check. The rules from Biden that you couldn't even check the classes, then you're sending out this, you're sending this money out all over the country. You're not even going to check if there's any kids in the classes. They wouldn't even allow an audit of whether or not kids were actually being taught. It's so disgusting and aggravating. I can't even begin to think about it. Larry Elder, Abel Maldonado, thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. Thanks for opening our eyes. California. All right, Michael Reagan, conservative analyst, Newsmax contributor, passing away Sunday at the age of 80. He had been on this show many times. All this according to a statement released by his family. Reagan was the adopted son of President Ronald Reagan and a frequent guest here on our show and on this network. Our CEO, Chris Ruddy, releasing a statement saying, in part, Michael Reagan was the living embodiment of his father's legacy, and throughout his life, he worked tirelessly to carry forward Ronald Reagan's torch for freedom, family, and faith. We at Newsmax will greatly miss Michael Reagan, and we'll be right back.
It can be hard when the ones who cared for you need care. So whether it's a caregiver at home or support at a senior living community, TheNewCare.com makes it easier to find the right fit. Join now and find care at care.com.
As a neurologist, my patients are often concerned with age-related memory decline. I recommend Cunol Brain Health with 2 powerful, high-absorption ingredients clinically shown to improve memory, focus, attention, and more. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Derriere, caboose, booty, Badunkadunk. No matter what you call it, if you have hemorrhoids, your tushy is no laughing matter. So don't use a cream that treats your rear end like a joke. Get serious relief with Recticare Advanced Hemorrhoidal Cream. Recticare Advanced is seriously effective with 2 powerful medicines for rapid dual-action relief, soothing the uncomfortable swelling, itching, and pain of your hemorrhoids. For serious hemorrhoid relief for your buns, get Recticare Advanced.
Protect your family. Buy LifeVac now.
Thank you, Dad.
That was us over 10 years ago.
Now LifeVac is responsible for saving over 4,000 lives from choking.
In the time it takes you to pick up the phone and call, another life could be saved.
The LifeVac saved my life in 1 to 2 seconds.
Protecting families has always been our mission. I'm sure you love your family like I love my daughter. Do us all a favor and get your own LifeVac now.
Go to lifevac.net or call 877-LifeVac. Order now.
I wish my TV provider let me choose what I pay for.
Sling lets you do that.
I like the sound of that.
Choose and customize your channel lineup or pause and watch for free. Sling lets you do that. Base package required.
JB Smoove, what are you doing here? I'm always here. I know what you're doing here, though. A consumer cellular commercial. You know, we should get you signed up. Aren't I too young? We got deals for people over 50. That sounds great. Sign me up. Make it happen, Teddy. Right now, get your second month free. Call Consumer Cellular.
It's time to celebrate with Omaha Steaks end of season event. For a limited time, we're offering 50% off site-wide. That's 50% off all your favorites, like our Butcher's Classic assortment, including our USDA certified tender filet mignon and top sirloin fillets, plus chicken, pork chops, desserts, and more, all for just $99.99. Plus, you'll get 8 burgers free when you visit omahasteaks.com/TV today.
WSOP presents the NFL Poker Experience. Rep your team. Compete in exciting NFL tournaments. Win exclusive NFL Poker Championship rings and collect cards to complete the NFL albums. Download the WSOP free-to-play app for a chance to win $1,000 towards your favorite team merchandise.
Hi there, I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America. With trillions of dollars vanishing from the stock portfolios of retiring Americans, many hardworking people I speak with are concerned about the holdings in their IRAs. But I have good news for you. Our team at Swiss America can show you how easy it is to own gold in your IRA. You see, even with economic turmoil all around us, gold continues to not only be a safe haven, but is also increasing to all-time highs. The volatility of markets has created a lot of undue stress for people. Wouldn't you like that peace of mind that diversifying into metals can provide? For over 40 years, Swiss America has helped people just like you own precious metals in your IRAs. So don't miss this opportunity. Call or text our team at the number on your screen to receive a free copy of our Gold IRA brochure today.
Welcome back. Time now for news from the left. The Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, making some moves against Senator Mark Kelly, issuing a formal letter of censure, initiating this retirement grade determination proceedings with reduction in his retirement grade from the military, which would lower his pension as well. Kelly is furious about this, going on with Jon Stewart to defend his decision that brought this all on, of course, to make that video telling our troops to ignore orders that basically Democrats don't think are legal, which was a horrific decision for them to make, trying to nip away at the quality of our military and its allegiance to the commander-in-chief. He tried to defend himself on Jon Stewart. It went terribly. Take a listen.
If a reasonable person would think that this thing that they are asking me to do is illegal, you have an obligation. It's not an option. You have an obligation not to follow those orders.
So are the boat strikes illegal?
I'm on the Armed Services and the Intelligence Committee.
Right.
They have some complicated legal rationale, 40 pages of why these are legal. It's questionable at best.
So wait a minute here. You're telling members of the military that they need to know whether or not their orders are legal, and you, as a senator of the United States and a former military member himself, doesn't know with the bombing of the boats, the thing they talk about all the time. He doesn't even know if that's legal or not. Yet he's telling members of the military that they should be ignoring orders from the President of the United States if they might be illegal. Nice job, Mark. Next up, Trump-hating pundit George Conway launching a bid for New York's 12th congressional district. His campaign video is about as bad as he is. Take a look.
When we see it,
We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
hear it,
We will give them pardons.
read it, and feel it. We find it hard to believe, but it's real. It's happening on the streets of New York City every day. And just when you think it can't get any worse, it does.
Yeah, it gets worse because it makes George Conway run for office. Did you watch the videos behind him? They actually tried to use the Elon Nazi salute as part of the video. That's how fake these people are. The Oompa Loompa is running for Congress. And finally, Jasmine Crockett thinks it's racist for others to call out her fake street girl persona, despite admitting that she was raised in affluence. Take a listen.
I was a criminal defense attorney. I was a public defender. I am somebody who walked into plenty of jails and dealt with real killers. So let me be clear. I understand what happens in the streets, but I don't have to, quote unquote, be a street girl. And I don't even know why.
Do you think that that's racist?
No. What is it? Joy, you know it's racist.
You went to a private school in a white neighborhood, honey. We all know who you are. All right, Trump talks sports up next.
A new year brings new threats, and Cyberman's ready for every one of them. While hackers plot their next move, Cyberman's already there, protecting families, businesses, and governments before danger can strike. This year, protect what matters most with easy-to-use, award-winning protection. With PCmatic, you get American-made protection that's faster, smarter, and stronger. Start 2026 with confidence. Visit PCmatic.com today.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell it all because of my excess skin. Sono Bello changed that in one visit.
Introducing the new Lift EX, the just one visit total body transformation everyone is talking about.
I am super happy with my results.
I decided to give Sono Bello a try. Look at me, I have a silhouette. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is Sono Bello's breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative. Our body contouring experts sculpt, tighten, and lift your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside, all in just one visit with less downtime.
Sono Bello targeted the areas diet exercise could not do. I found me again.
Sono Bello has over 50,000 five-star reviews, and Lift EX is exclusively available at Sono Bello, America's #1 cosmetic surgery specialist. Book your free, personalized consultation today. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever.
This year is my year thanks to Sono Bello.
Call Sono Bello for your free consultation today.
With riots and violent looting going on all over the country, I don't feel safe leaving the house without this banana. Normally, I would be worried about this creepy guy, but I've got my banana with me. That same car has been sitting outside my house for a while now. Better keep this banana by the door.
Sounds ridiculous, right? Now imagine this banana was capable of incapacitating an attacker from over 60 feet.
At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to learn more.
Introducing Stogo, the only apparel with adjustable medical-grade support engineered with high-strength cables that reinforce the body, designed to help you overcome injuries, minimize pain, and regain the confidence to get back out there. Learn more at Stogo.com.
Every business wants to grow, but no one wants the headaches that can come with it. On ShipStation.com, you can automate all your shipping needs, so you can ship 15 times more orders. Get on board with ShipStation, where shipping gets solved. Start your free trial today at ShipStation.com.
All right, finally tonight, Trump says that his wife hates one of the funniest impressions that he does. A little from earlier today. It was a pretty good speech. Take a look.
By the way, my wife hates when I do this. But the weightlifting, but no, the girl gets up. And you see, I want to be more, but I have somebody watching. But she gets it, and he walks up, bing. He could have gone ding, 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 ding.
I mean, it's good stuff. There was also some commentary about the speed golf too, Rob, which I know you've witnessed yourself. The guy can play a round of golf in like 2.5 hours.
Look, he can hit the ball still, 79 years old. Olympics, by the way, start Winter Olympics 1 month from tonight. Soft opening ceremony. How about that?
The Winter Olympics. I like to watch the skiing. That's good fun.
And the hockey. And the figure skating as well. Remember when figure skating was a thing?
That's your thing.
Yes.
You can take the figure
It always
skating
has
right
been,
there.
Rob. It always has been.
I know why you're watching.
All right, Rob. Thank you. Appreciate it. Let's do it.